On today's show, the Capitals pick up a big win over the Sharks, and the latest with the Brotas brothers. I'm talking Aliaksei and Ilya Protas next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, I talk to you about the Brotas brothers. Well, you'll know them as the Protas brothers. I'm talking Aliaksei and Ilya, and how both of their seasons have really shot straight to the moon. You take a look at the season of Aliaksei Protas, who is posting career best numbers, but his younger brother, Ilya, well, he is no slouch either, as he has put up 50 goals already this season in the OHL. I'll talk about that a bit later. The Capitals falling to the Kings, as all good things must come to an end. The Capitals fell to the Kings. What did they learn in that game? I'll talk about that. But just to get it going here, I'm talking the Capitals over the Sharks in a big game on Saturday. And it's a bit interesting that there is not this, bitter rivalry. These teams don't play each other too often, but this game saw a lot of physicality. I'm talking Duhaime, and more particular, I'm talking about Tom Wilson dropping the mitts in a fight that just saw him devour the Shark opponent there in that game. I guess the biggest thing I would say about it is that we know that Tom Wilson already has stitches, and he wanted to get in a fight with him. That really drew the ire of Tom Wilson, and ultimately why it was a decisive, anger-filled fight with Tom Wilson. I'll talk about that. But just to talk about the game, let's get it going here, talking about the Capitals picking up a big win over the Sharks. And, on paper, it didn't seem like it should be too big of a fight. That Sharks team, if you look at the standings, they're not one of the better teams in the NHL. As a matter of fact, they're one of the worst. So it should be a walk in the park for the Capitals. But what are some of the things that we know? This season, sometimes the Capitals have struggled playing down to teams. So I think it's a good thing that the Capitals found a way to rally and pick up a big win. Now, you take a look at the Sharks. They are a team with a lot of young talent that on paper, ostensibly, they are going to be really, really good in the relatively not too distant future. I still think ultimately they're a couple years away from being true contenders. But young talent will only go so far. See the Buffalo Sabres, for example. But, you take a look at the Sharks, a bit different, as they have premier talent like Macklin, Celebrini on this team, that I think that if they could add maybe some veteran touch here and there, it could be a true game changer for the Sharks. But let's do this. Let's dive into the latest match and what has the Capitals riding high, has me riding high, feeling good about this team. As I record this on Sunday afternoon, they're tied with the Winnipeg Jets for the most points in all of the National Hockey League. And, you take a look at it to start the season. If anyone had said that the Capitals would be sitting atop of the NHL, the Eastern Conference, or the Metro, well, I think you would have gotten laughed at right in the face. But the Capitals proving a lot of the critics wrong as they continue to win and pick up a dominant win over the Sharks. Now, this win was a huge, huge milestone for the team, improving the Capitals' road record to an impressive 23-8-2. And that's interesting in the regard that generally teams play better at home, but the Capitals have played very, very well on the road this season, solidifying their status with the highest winning percentage in the NHL at .727. quite an accomplishment what the Capitals have been able to put together. And as of late, you take a look at a bit, I guess I'm going to say a blip on the radar against the Kings. Over the last 13 road games, they've now accumulated an outstanding 10-2-1 record. And this team gelling, that's the biggest thing, is everyone buying into Spencer Carberry's systems, players posting career best numbers and key additions. I'm talking Pierre-Luc Dubois, I'm talking Chychrun, Logan Thompson, these kind of players. Not to mention the younger talent that's already on the team that's taken their game to the next level. I'm talking Protas, McMichael, these kind of things. But you take a look at it, the Capitals have played well on the road, and in particular playing against teams from the Pacific Division. In this game, the Caps capped off the season, or this game, with a solid 12-3-1 record against Pacific Division teams. So they've really had Pacific Division teams' numbers this season, and that's some of those advanced analytics that sometimes don't make sense. Like Alex Ovechkin plays that much better against the Jets or the Toronto Maple Leafs, this kind of thing that sometimes it's not easy to understand, but just know that the Capitals have really excelled and played well against Pacific Division teams. Now, this was all kickstarted off by Dylan Strome, a guy that has been a difference maker. And this isn't his first season here, I get this, but when I've talked about players posting career numbers and just having a revitalization with the Capitals, that is especially true with Dylan Strome, as the Capitals were looking for that player to pick up the baton from Nick Backstrom when he stepped away, has a pretty important role playing that first line center with Alex Ovechkin. But this was a big game for Dylan Strome, as he was the one that found the back of the net, netting his 21st goal of the season with a beautiful assist from Alex Ovechkin. And why it was a smart play on their part is that Alex Ovechkin was over to the right, Dylan Strome a bit more to the center left there, and he was left wide open. Why? Well, I think it was a pretty safe bet to say that Alex Ovechkin was probably going to shoot the puck. Not the case. Feeds it to Strome, putting the Caps up early. And Strome, in particular, like I've talked about, has had a revitalization playing with the Capitals. As I've talked about, the guy that was kind of put on the scrap heap by the Blackhawks organization, accumulating points in 5 of his last 6 games. And that is one of the key ingredients to the Capitals' secret sauce this season, is sustainability. You take a look at when the Capitals have played well historically, and I like to point to 2018 because that was the high water mark for this team, and is up until this point when they won the Stanley Cup, is there was a lot of ebbing and flowing. There hasn't been a whole lot of that. There has not been a sustained losing streak by this team this year. So that is ultimately what has the Capitals in a great position. But in the game against the Sharks in particular, the Capitals were able to apply pressure early, and ultimately how they were able to vacuum that for their momentum and helped push them forward down the ice. So quite a thing. In the first period, Aliaksei Protas also added to that scoring frenzy, marking his 29th goal of the season, his 6th in just 4 games. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the final segment, but you take a look at Aliaksei Protas. What's the key ingredient to his thing? Post up in front of the net. He is a huge dude, and he is not going to be easily driven away from there. Have him post up, screen the netminder, as if you're an everydayer of the show. I've talked about that. Put the big guys up front, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Tom Wilson, have them ready for deflections, rebounds, second opportunities, just screening the netminder in general. That paid off big for the Capitals in this game. Aliaksei Protas, and you got to think, is there anyone in the coaching staff out there that's listening to this show? Maybe that is the case, because it does seem like that has been the secret ingredient for the Capitals all season. And you take a look at it, it's even the secondary, or in this case, I guess I'm going to say more tertiary goal scorers. Taylor Radish extends the lead to 3-0. which consequently led to the Sharks goalie Alexander Georgiev being pulled from the game early. So you take a look at it. Georgiev historically has been a pretty good netminder. I'm thinking back to his time with the Rangers. But, you take a look at the Sharks in general. I don't know if there is a netminder out there that could have really great results considering the defense that is in front of him. But by the end of the first period, the Capitals were dominant, outshooting the Sharks 17-3. And like I touched on earlier, sometimes the Capitals have struggled playing down to teams. And what do I mean when I say playing down to teams is playing against teams that aren't as good as them. They oftentimes excel at playing teams that are better than them. So for them to find a way to rally was huge for the team. And the second period was intense but scoreless. So I think in a lot of ways the Sharks figured out what the Capitals were doing. They found a way to batten down the hatches a bit, and he was able to read his team the riot act, no doubt, between the first and second period, getting his team in order. But there was some physical exchanges, including fights between Tom Wilson and Brandon Duhaime, as well as Zach Osterpuck and Noah Gregor. So quite a physical altercation out there. And, like I say, if you want to pick a fight against Tom Wilson, you better pack a lunch. And, I know that the player that he was fighting against was no slouch either. But at the end of the day, you were trying to get into a fist fight with a guy that had over 20 stitches in his face. Not too smart. There's got to be a bit of a bro code or a hockey code. You think they're at the end of the day like, hey, maybe we should leave that guy alone since he's got quite a few stitches in his face. Or maybe he didn't know. I guess at the end of the day, we don't know. But Jacob Chychrun even got a penalty for stepping in to defend his teammates during that heated moment. That was the one that drew the ire from head coach Spencer Carberry, as well as it should, is that sometimes when you step in for your fellow teammates, you're not always thrown the book at so strictly in this case, but that was the case for Chychrun as he had to sit out some extended time. But taking a look at the third period in particular, the Sharks did manage to find Twine past Logan Thompson. That was the only goal scored in the game by the Sharks, and one scored from Macklin Celebrini. Again, if you are just a Cap-centric fan, maybe a bit of a homer and you don't know, maybe you want to circle Macklin Celebrini as one of the premier players in the NHL. At one point will no doubt be one of the best. But a big game in particular for Trevor Van Riemsdyk as he scored his first goal in over 2 years. And I know that he's a defender, and it's not their job per se to find the back of the net. Their job is, well, to be that rear guard, that defender. But he found Twine for the first time after a long 154 game drought. It was great to see TVR back on the score sheet. All things considered, a solid contributor on the blue line. Is there better options internally, or could they flip him? That's an argument for a different podcast, but TVR finding the back of the net for the first time in over 2 years was huge. And, the big thing in this game was net minding. Of course, your team is only going to go as far as your netminder. And who am I talking about? LT, of course, Logan Thompson in the final running, I guess I would say, for the Vezina, along with Connor Hellebuck. He continued to shine, stopping 19 of 20 shots and earning his 29th win of the season, setting a new career high and ranking him fourth in the NHL for wins this season, just behind Connor Hellebuck and Andrei Vasilevsky and Jake Ottinger. So what a game for the Capitals. And also Lars Eller, Tom Wilson, Pierre-Luc Dubois, each boasting multi-assist games. That was a masterclass by the Capitals on how to do things the right way. And of course, one of the highlights, Ovechkin, he scored his 887th career goal, moving him within eight of Wayne Gretzky's all-time record. So if there is one big thing to take away, or two, let's say, the Capitals picking up that big win, of course, and Alex Ovechkin, the grade 8, is now 8 away from Wayne Gretzky. And it's been incredible lately with 12 goals in his last 17 games, bringing his season total to 34 and placing him 5th in the NHL. So quite an accomplishment for the grade 8 as he is chipping away and getting ever closer to Wayne Gretzky. It's a bit of a moving target, isn't it? Some people said it was April 10th against the Hurricanes, but like I say, one game he'll score one goal. If he gets a hat trick, it could be a lot sooner than any of us think. All right, so coming up here after the break, there's always the good and bad news. Talking about games here. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. After the break, I'll talk about the Capitals falling to the Kings. I'll discuss straight ahead. Eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just over 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or keto. Now, I love how Factor keeps you on track with healthy, delicious meals without the time-consuming prep. Listen, it is busy in everyday life. If you got kids at home, or just say you are a person that's always on the go, Factor can make your life a lot easier. Factor also offers smoothies, breakfast, and snacks, so you can always have something nutritious ready to go. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast and use code Factor Podcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Factor Podcast at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So there's good news and there's bad news. And next, I'll talk about the Capitals falling to the Kings, a good Kings team, and facing their former netminder, Darcy Kuemper. And before the game, I did a podcast talking about, was this going to be a revenge game for Pierre-Luc Dubois and Matt Roy? Well, as it turned out, it was more of a revenge game, I guess, if you can call it, for Darcy Kuemper, as he was a brick wall in net for the Kings. And, I think this bears repeating to a certain extent, is that a lot of people said last season that Darcy Kuemper was a poor netminder. And one of the things that I had always said is, his history, his pedigree, his history speaks for itself, winning the cup with Colorado, all these kind of things that, to start the season, he was the de facto #1 netminder for the Capitals. But what do you know? Spencer Carberry's systems were getting fully rolled out by that time. By the time the Capitals figured it out, Charlie Lindgren had ridden away with it. He took over the reins as the #1 netminder, and ultimately why the Capitals traded Darcy Kuemper out to the Kings last summer. All things considered, I'm happy for Darcy. He's killing it in the City of Angels, and I'm happy for Pierre-Luc Dubois, as he has been an absolute game changer for the Capitals this season. That move was met with a lot of skepticism, a lot of criticism, with some of my fellow Locked On NHL hosts as well, saying, wow, what do you think of that move? He signed an 8-year deal with the Kings, and now he's 7 years on the hook on the Capitals. Wow. Well, what do I have to say with that? A great move. And, it's one of the things that former GM Brian McClellan was able to look into the weeds, the advanced analytics, and see a true diamond in the rough in Pierre-Luc Dubois. And as far as the 24-25 season, he has been an absolute game changer. So let's do that. Let's talk about those two players, three former players facing each other, and what that meant for the Capitals as they fall to the Kings. And it was a tough one. You saw their 5-game winning streak come to an end, unfortunately dropping 3-0 to the Kings at Crypto.com Arena. And already didn't love the game because it was one of those late games. And I know I rail on that all the time, but starting at 10:30 local, that's not a lot of fun. Now, this defeat was particularly painful as it marked the Capitals' second shutout of the season, the first one being against the Lightning back in late October. And this game in particular was one of the ones that I talked about Spencer Carberry talking about not reading too much into one loss, unless that loss kind of just spreads out into a losing streak and you drop 3, 4, 5 games, that take it for what it is. You lost to a really good hockey team. What needs to get cleaned up, and what did we learn? I think that oftentimes it's easy to push the panic button, like they lose one game. What the heck? This is the Capitals. Push that panic button. Help, help, help. We saw that especially the case around the trade deadline, where there was a lot of fans thinking that the Capitals should have made more moves. Well, as it's showed here as of late, the Capitals have it. They just have to dig deep. Now, as far as the game overview, the post-mortem, if you will, even though the Caps were in it for the first 2 periods, they only managed to generate 21 shots on goal. Again, like I talked about, a really good Kings team. The Kings really clamped down with their tight defensive play. Of course, when you take a look at the score sheet, making it hard for the Capitals to find the back of the net. I don't think it was for a lack of trying that the Capitals lost the game. I just think they faced a really good team. But what's being drawn into focus is this is a good litmus test. This is a good measuring stick for the Capitals, because say you kill it and you beat Anaheim or you beat Buffalo or you beat the Blackhawks. Well, great. I want this team to be able to answer the bell and pick up wins against some of the best in the NHL. Those are the kind of teams that you're going to have to face in the playoffs. They need to find a way to tighten it up. Now, the game felt within reach at the start of the third, but then the Kings struck twice quickly, and that pretty much sealed the deal for the Kings. And it was a showdown between Charlie Lindgren and Darcy Kuemper. And, at the end of the day, Darcy Kuemper seemed like he was pretty cool about going out to the Kings. But at the end of the day, you really knew that he probably wanted to stick it to the Capitals for the way that he was dealt and how he was treated within the team. As far as Lindgren, you take a look at it, played a pretty good game against a really good team, stopping 24 of 27. But then Darcy Kuemper, like I said, recording the shutout, the brick wall in net. He was the one that got revenge, if you want to call that, against his former team. But the game was important, like I referenced off the top of the segment. It was a return home, if you will, even though he played there for one season. You got to think there was booze in the crowd anytime that Matt Roy and PLD had the puck. Speaking of Dubois, he faced his old team and definitely felt the heat from the Kings fans, like I talked about, getting booed every time they were in possession of the puck. He got the first shot on goal, but couldn't find a way to score. Like I talked about, it would have been a really cool moment in the game if Pierre-Luc Dubois got into a fight or scored a goal or two, an assist, something of that nature. But as it turns out, the Kings really had the Caps number. The Kings took control early with that Warren Foegele putting them on the board after a nice pass from Trevor Moore. So you take a look at it, them getting on the board early sometimes can be the thing that sets the momentum in their direction. Head coach Spencer Carberry attempted to shake things up in this game, moving Strome to center and mixing the lines in search of that elusive offensive spark. So Dylan Strome moving around a little bit, some players moving here and there. They tried to jumpstart the offense, but it wasn't the case. The Kings really were dialed in, especially in the third period, as much as the Caps tried to rally back, something that the Capitals have done all season. The Kings' defensive game made it incredibly hard for the Caps to generate any offense, leading to a staggering one shot on goal in the first 15 minutes of the third period. So you take a look at it. It's not always going to be your night. Even if you are one of the better teams in the NHL, it's not going to be your night. But it's all about the little things and missed opportunities. There was a late game power play opportunity when Byfield was hit with a high sticking penalty, but the Caps just couldn't capitalize on it, cementing the Kings' shutout. So it was a tough game for the Caps. That loss marked the Caps' first defeat since March 1st. And while it's a tough pill to swallow, it's crucial for the team to regroup, as they did, of course, against the Sharks after that. So talking about a game, of course, it's fun to talk to you guys about wins, but doing my due diligence, I have to talk to you about losses as well. And it was a rough night, a rough late night, early morning for the Capitals as they faced the Kings. But the good news, of course, as we know, the Capitals found a way to pick up the dub against the Sharks. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about the Brotas brothers, otherwise known as the Protas brothers. Who do I speak of? I'm talking Aliaksei and Ilya, whose both their seasons have just been shot straight to the moon. I'm talking Protas, big numbers. I'm talking Ilya, 50 goals already. I'll break it all down straight ahead. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keeping fuller longer. Now, personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to snack. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Ever check your banking account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. And listen, I think in the modern economy, everyone's trying to do that. They're trying to save more money by not going out more, trying to eat at home. So that's why you need friends like Monarch Money. Take control of your finances. With Monarch Money, use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. All right, in this next segment here, we're talking about the Brotas brothers, otherwise known as Ilya and Aleksei Protas, and both players, well, they learned a lot over this past summer here, as it has been said that one of the things they did, both the brothers put in a lot of time shooting the puck, getting better at shooting the puck, and well, that has really paid off, as Ilya has put up 50 goals in the the OHL, really taking his career to the next level. Now, when you talk about Ilya, oftentimes people say, well, when is he going to be ready to join the Capitals? Listen, I still think he's probably, 2-3 years away from joining the team. But if he can continue on this current trajectory, he could be a part of that next wave of Capitals great players that I've talked about on the show. But let's talk about that in this segment. Talking about the Protas brothers and the 24-25 season. And all things considered, it's been a great season for Aliaksei and Ilya. Aliaksei Protas recently celebrated that major milestone, recording his first NHL hat trick. We remember the game. Alex Ovechkin was open. He could have been one closer to Wayne Gretzky. What did he do? He knew that Protas was one goal short of his first NHL hat trick, so he did what makes him a great captain, fed the puck to Protas. Protas slammed it home, getting the hat trick. What a moment for him, taking his game to the next level. But it's not just the big guy. It's not just Aliaksei. Ilya, he won't be underdone either here. Let's take a look at him. He is carving out his own path in the OHL. Just days after Alexei's big game, Ilya stole the spotlight with a natural hat trick for the Windsor Spitfires of the OHL. Now, some of these games are a bit more difficult to find. Usually you can find some sort of condensed game after. This guy is next level, Ilya, that is. And if he continues building his game, he is going to be a part of that really next great wave of Capitals players. I'm talking Leonard. I'm talking Crystal. He is going to be a bit further out than those players, but he is still coming in maybe the following wave after that. Now, that's a big thing for him. The young star netted his third hat trick of the season, putting his total to an impressive 50 goals in his rookie season. 50 goals in the OHL, quite an accomplishment. And Ilya's stellar performance, Ilya showcased his skills and stellar speed, starting by tying the game at 2-2 and quickly following it up with a go-ahead goal against or put up by the Spitfires, putting them up 3-2. And what did he do? What was the icing on top? He capped it off with a hat trick with a power play goal. One of those moments where if you're watching at home, fist pumping moments, you felt that enthusiasm. Now, alongside his impressive goal scoring, Ilya also notched an assist in a tough 6-5 shootout loss against Saginaw, which earned him recognition as the OHL Performer of the Night. So you take a look at it, putting up 50 goals, getting these accomplishments, these accolades. He is already, putting together quite an impressive resume in his first goal of it. Now, with 119 points, and what is that more specifically? 50 goals, 69 assists in just 60 games. He's been on fire. And to put it into perspective, he is ranked number 3 in all of the OHL in goals. That is what we're looking for, and I guess that talent runs deep with the Brotas brothers, known as Ilya and Alexei Protas. Now, like I say, he ranks 3rd in the OHL, last checked in goals. Quite an accomplishment. And you take a look at Alexei. Well, he is rather proud of his younger brother as well, but he has a good season going as well. He's also putting in the work. 29th goal of the season against the Sharks, all while cheering on his brother from afar. Alexei even shared a post on Instagram celebrating Ilya's achievement on, like I said, on Instagram, showing how proud he is of his brother. So it's a cool moment. And, kind of an interesting thing that two brothers being chosen and playing within the same organization. I know that Ilya is playing for the Ontario Hockey League, but at one point, he is considered a Capitals prospect, and at some point will be on the big team, at least ostensibly. So quite something what those two brothers have been able to put together. Now, looking ahead, if Ilya plays in the remaining 3 games of the season for Windsor, he's projected to finish with a remarkable 125 points, 53 goals, 72 assists by the end of the season. So oftentimes on the show, I talk to you about Alexei, but Ilya should not be a guy that's overlooked either, as he has been putting up big numbers. It's easy to say career numbers when he's so young, but he is putting up right out of the gate really glowing numbers. And the big thing that I'm looking forward to, can he build on this? What are we going to see from Ilya next season? And also in that same breath, or a similar breath, would be Alexei. He is putting up, career numbers this season. Can he have that same success next season? So definitely the brothers to watch, the Brotas brothers, if you will, who are continuing to impress in the NHL, also the OHL. Definitely a fun story to watch. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week, covering all the teams in the NHL, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team. It is every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.